The fall of Skyview. It all starts in 1969 at the grand opening of Skyview. Iris Campbell and her boyfriend Paul are walking toward the entrance when the valet's radio catches Iris's attention. It's playing a strange song. They step into a cramped elevator that's already groaning under the weight, jerking as it rises. The construction had been rushed, opened 5 months ahead of schedule, and that starts to weigh on Iris's mind. Up top, it's all celebration. Live music, couples dancing on a glass floor that shows the 150-meter drop below. Everyone's so caught up in the joy that no one notices a piece of the chandelier falling onto the glass floor and cracking it. Then, our lovebirds head to the tower's observation deck, where a little boy is playing near the railing, tossing coins from the top while ignoring the security guard's warnings. One of those coins, instead of simply falling, gets sucked into an air vent, hits a fan, and gets stuck in the mechanism. Meanwhile, Paul kneels down and proposes to Iris. She says yes, overwhelmed, and chooses that moment to tell him she's pregnant. Paul is ecstatic, imagining the future they'll build together. They head back down to the party and dance like there's no tomorrow to celebrate their new life. And it's right then that everything changes. The structure can't handle the weight of everyone jumping. It starts literally spitting out bolts. People keep dancing, unaware that they're standing over a death trap. And that fan jammed by the coin? It breaks a blade and starts leaking gas silently. Iris glances around and feels that chill down her spine. The crack on the glass floor begins to spread. In seconds, bodies start raining down to the ground below. Sadly, Paul becomes one of them. In the chaos, a woman bumps into a cook, catches fire, and runs screaming. The leaking gas meets the flames, triggering an explosion that tears through the restaurant, blasting that little coin far away. The singer performing on stage pushes her son into a kitchen cart, saving him just in time, but she herself is swallowed by the flames. Amid the chaos, some guests try to escape down the stairs, including the mischievous kid who'd been tossing coins, but the whole structure gives way. Everyone rushes to the elevator, but it's overloaded by the panicked crowd and plummets, with someone still caught in the doorway. And just when it seems it can't get any worse, the tower splits in half, leaving people face to face with the collapsing glass. That same coin that had gotten stuck in the vent now falls, hits the piano, and sends it crashing through the glass wall, taking down the few survivors still hanging on. Down below, even the little boy can't escape, meeting his end crushed by the piano. The tower keeps crumbling until only Iris and the singer's son remain hidden. They're hanging on by Iris's ring alone, but eventually they fall, and she's impaled on a metal rod. The sacrifice. Decades later, in 2024, Iris's granddaughter Stefani Reyes jolts awake screaming in her college classroom, haunted by the same Skyview collapse her grandmother once saw. Her nights are even worse, constant nightmares of the tower and of a woman she barely knows, Iris, the missing grandmother. Sleep-deprived and on the verge of losing her scholarship, Stefani decides to go back home in search of answers. Back in her hometown, she reunites with her father, Marty, and her younger brother, Charlie. Then she visits her Uncle Howard and Aunt Brenda's house, where she reconnects with her cousins, Eric, Julia, and Bobby. But when she mentions Iris and the collapsing tower from her dreams, the atmosphere turns heavy. Howard tells her that after the vision at Skyview, his mother became paranoid, locking him and his sister Darlene inside, refusing to let them go to school, obsessed with predicting and preventing horrible deaths. The state eventually took custody of the kids, and since then, he's wanted nothing to do with his mother. Brenda, feeling sorry for Stefani, reveals where Howard keeps Iris's old letters. In them, Stefani finds a remote address and a photo that confirms the truth. The woman in her dreams is her grandmother. She drives out to a secluded, heavily fortified cabin. At the door, Iris, now old and frail, only lets her in after Stefani leaves her keys and any sharp objects in a lockbox. Inside, the place looks like a bunker. Everything's set up so Iris barely has to step outside. Iris explains that she woke up right at the moment of the proposal. Paul's ring still in her hand, the music playing, the floor intact. Gasping, she realized it was a warning. Instead of ignoring it, she ran to stop the boy from throwing the coin, snatched it from his hand, and kept it. Then she rushed to the stage, grabbed the microphone, and screamed for everyone to leave, warning that the floor was going to give way. Panic spread, but differently this time. The restaurant was evacuated and the night ended abruptly. Days later, engineers confirmed the structural problems were even worse than anyone thought. Skyview was permanently closed and demolished months later. The tower never fell in real life, but by preventing the disaster, Iris disrupted death's design and created a new debt. Everyone who was supposed to die that night and their descendants began living on borrowed time. She shows Stefani clippings, obituaries, and notes about bizarre accidents she's convinced were no coincidence. Iris also reveals she has cancer and knows her time is almost up. She spent decades studying the signs, compiling everything into a notebook filled with sketches and theories about death's plan. Inside, Stefani notices an old coin, the same one Iris took from the boy all those years ago. When Stefani says it all sounds insane, Iris insists the visions aren't random. The ability to foresee comes from their bloodline, a warning that death is circling them again. As they talk, a small incident nearly turns deadly, but Iris spots it and stops death's plan just in time. Still, Stefani wants to leave. Desperate for her to believe, Iris follows her outside, hands her her the notebook and makes the most extreme choice of her life, refusing to protect herself from death. The wind picks up, and the metal support of a large windmill crashes down on a fire extinguisher. The piece shoots off and slices through Iris's face, impaling her right there, just meters from her granddaughter. Iris's sacrifice becomes the spark for the rest of the story. With the notebook and the coin in her hands, Stefani now knows something terribly wrong is coming. The lawnmower. At Iris's funeral, the family gathers. Darlene, the mother who abandoned Stefani and Charlie years ago, shows up, leaving the siblings torn between anger and longing. Howard, still bitter, refuses to talk about curses or fate. Sometime later, during a barbecue at Howard and Brenda's house, the family tries to move on. But little by little, death starts setting the stage. A glass falls and shatters. While cleaning, a shard slips into the ice and ends up in someone's drink.
You don't get to pick the one you get.
A watering timer accidentally turns on when a bull knocks a bottle onto the button. The hose starts filling, slowly nudging a rake that's leaning next to a lawnmower. Meanwhile, Howard is playing on the trampoline with his son Bob and Charlie. The trampoline tears, and in the shock, Julie drops her glass onto the ground. Howard steps on the shard, slices his foot, and falls backward, unable to get up. The hose keeps pushing the rake, which lands on the mower's switch and starts the blades spinning. They reach Howard's face, shredding everything in a spray of blood and grass. It's the first death of the new cycle, right in front of almost the entire family. The garbage truck. After Howard's brutal death, Stefani gathers everyone and explains what she's learned from the notebook. Death is following a specific order, starting with Iris's eldest child and moving down through the bloodline, one by one. By that logic, after Howard, the next should be Eric, the oldest of the cousins. But Eric doesn't seem worried and heads to his tattoo studio. There, he narrowly escapes death when chains hanging from the ceiling tangle around the fan and his nose ring, sparking a small fire. The tension builds as he struggles to untangle himself, the chain twisting tighter and tighter in the fan. He's nearly engulfed in flames, surviving only because his leather jacket shields him and the fire crew arrives in time. He chalks it up to luck, not a warning. The next day, Stefani and Charlie show up to protect him, convinced he's next. As they walk along the family street, kids are playing soccer, a garbage truck approaches for pickup, and Eric keeps mocking Stefani's premonitions. While they argue, Julia heads out for her morning jog. Just then, a soccer ball slams into her face, knocking her backward into a large trash bin on the curb. Before anyone can react, the garbage truck's mechanical arm grabs the bin and lifts it. Stephanie, Eric, and Charlie run, screaming and pounding on the truck. But the driver, wearing headphones, doesn't hear a thing. The bin is dumped straight into the compactor. Stephanie climbs onto the truck and tries to pull Julia out, but it's too late. The horrifying scene makes it clear Death skipped Eric and went straight for Julia. The reason comes right after. Brenda confesses that Eric was the result of an affair, not Howard's biological son, meaning he isn't part of the marked bloodline. He's technically off the list, at least for now. The MRI room. With Howard and Julia gone, the family finally accepts that death is following a specific sequence. Next on the list is Bob, the youngest. Desperate, they look for the mysterious JB mentioned in the notebook. He turns out to be William Bloodworth, the same strange guy who always seemed to know too much about Death's design in the other Final Destination movies. Now comes the plot twist. He was the child Iris saved in the first premonition. Now an adult, he works in a hospital morgue. He confirms everything. Iris saved his life that night at Skyview, taught him what she knew about Death's plan, and together they figured out there are only two known ways to cheat it, either by taking another person's life and stealing their remaining years, or by dying and being clinically revived, just like Kimberly did years ago in Final Destination 2. The idea of killing someone is quickly ruled out by the family, but Eric, shaken by Howard and Julia's deaths, decides the second option is doable. After all, they're already in a hospital. He convinces Bob to trigger a severe allergic reaction using peanuts, since Bob is deathly allergic. The plan, Bob dies from anaphylaxis, gets revived by doctors, and death loses its claim. They grab peanut chocolates from a vending machine that jams. Frustrated, Eric punches the glass, cracking it. Then he and Bob shake the machine until the candy drops. From the impact, the internal spring that holds the snacks comes loose, a small detail that seems meaningless at the time. But well, anyone who's seen Final Destination knows that nothing happens for no reason. The two head to an empty MRI exam room. When Eric leaves to grab a wheelchair, he accidentally lets the door slam, knocking a clipboard against the control panel and switching the MRI on. The magnetic field starts to build. Eric thinks he's outsmarted Death, but Death already has a better plan. Bob, tense, eats the peanut butter knowing it might kill him. The allergy hits fast, his throat tightens, he can't breathe, his face swelling. He reaches for his epinephrine pen, but Eric already took it from him, so he wouldn't ruin the plan. It's a cruel moment. The boy practically begs while his brother clutches the cure. Eric's phone rings. It's Charlie trying to find them, but the phone is yanked from his hand and sucked straight into the MRI. Seconds later, every metal piercing in Eric's body starts pulling toward the machine. And when I say every piercing, I mean every single one. He's dragged toward the MRI, screaming, trying to hold on. That's when death strikes. The wheelchair Eric grabbed for his brother is pulled in too, slamming him into the machine. The magnetic force is so strong, the metal begins tearing through his body. In one final pull, the chair crushes Eric entirely into the MRI tunnel. The sound of bones snapping and blood splattering confirms it. Eric is dead. Meanwhile, Bob, barely conscious, crawls toward his brother's body, retrieves the epinephrine, and injects himself, reversing the reaction just in time. For a few seconds, it looks like the plan worked. Bob died and came back. But then, a nurse opens the door to check what's going on. The still active magnetic field pulls that loose vending machine spring from down the hall. It shoots through the air and impales Bob right in the forehead, killing him instantly. He collapses beside his brother, and when Stefani, Charlie, and Darlene arrive, they find both bodies on the floor. Outside the hospital, the old coin that had been tucked inside the notebook slips out and rolls quietly across the path, right into the feet of an old lady walking by. She picks it up, drops it into her purse, and walks away. The light pole in the lake. After the double tragedy at the hospital, Stefani is convinced that repeating the old survivor's tricks isn't enough. She decides to follow Iris's original plan, take her mother Darlene into the fortified cabin and isolate themselves until death gives up. Charlie hates the idea of hiding away, but Darlene volunteers to stay behind. She'll lock herself inside while her kids try to live their lives. Leaving the hospital, Darlene almost collides with a truck hauling logs, a grim reminder of Final Destination 2. The scare is enough for her to hand the wheel over to Stefani. When they reach Iris's property, the weather turns bad. Winds pick up, and one of the rooftop floodlights shorts out. Stephanie floors the trailer through the gate, but the impact jams her seatbelt as something heavy lands on it. Darlene realizes things are about to escalate fast. Stefani insists her mom go inside. If Darlene stays safe, death won't reach her or Charlie. Up on the roof, a small fire starts. Inside, a flower pot falls onto the stove, opening a gas leak that meets a spark from the roof wiring. Darlene runs toward the cabin door, but a massive explosion tears through the structure. The blast throws the trailer into a shallow lake beside the cabin. Inside, Stephanie loses consciousness, trapped by the locked seatbelt as water floods in. Charlie, thrown by the blast, lies half buried under debris. He comes to first, coughing from smoke and water, and tries to move. Darlene, badly burned, appears through the wreckage, using her last bit of strength to pull the wreckage off her son. Just as she frees him, a weakened light pole collapses onto her. The impact is brutal. Darlene dies right there, finally acting as the mother she always wanted to be, giving her life to buy her children a few extra seconds. Death in the lake. After the explosion and Darlene's gruesome death beneath the pole, the trailer sinks completely. Inside, Stefani is still trapped, fighting for air. Outside, Charlie, dazed, suddenly realizes his sister never escaped. He dives back into the water, pushing through twisted metal and broken glass until he finds her. With all his strength, he cuts the jammed seatbelt with a pocket knife, but Stefani is already unconscious. On the muddy bank, she suddenly gasps, coughing up water, dragging in air like she's been reborn.
You're okay.
They hug, convinced they've outsmarted death. To them, Stephanie died and was brought back. From that moment, the family starts calling her drowning their Kimberly Corman moment, the technical death that reset death's list. But come on, it's Final Destination. You know better. The final coin. A few days later, life feels strangely peaceful. Stefani seems lighter, truly believing she's beaten death. Charlie's getting ready for prom, excited to see his girlfriend. Stefani drives him to her house. While pinning the flower on his suit, she pricks her finger on the lapel pin. The blood dripping from her finger feels like deja vu, a quiet warning that the cycle isn't over. The girlfriend's father, who's a doctor, comes to greet them. They chat about the lake accident, and Stefani proudly says her brother brought her back from the dead. The doctor asks if her heart actually stopped, and that's when everything unravels. Confused, Stefani says she just stopped breathing, was unconscious for a few minutes, and woke up when her brother did CPR. The doctor calmly explains that isn't clinical death. Without cardiac arrest, without a flatline, without a medical declaration, it's not real death. Stephanie's smile fades instantly. She realizes death never reset anything. In death's eyes, the trick didn't count. Meanwhile, nearby, the coin's story comes full circle. The same old lady who picked it up outside the hospital is now buying lemonade at a stand by the train tracks. She pulls out her wallet, drops the coin by accident, and it rolls several meters, right onto the rails, lodging where it shouldn't. Seconds later, a train approaches. We see it roll over the coin, and moments later, the train derails, dragging wagons and tearing up the street where Stefani and Charlie are walking. They sprint away from the tracks, dodging flying debris. For a second, it seems like they made it. The train stops, the dust settles, and they're standing, alive, breathing hard. Stephanie grabs her brother's arm, both ready to celebrate their second chance. But the camera pans to one of the derailed wagons, loaded with logs. The impact left several logs loose, tilting, ready to fall. They tumble all at once, rolling down toward the street. Stefani and Charlie look up together, too late to move. The logs crush them almost simultaneously, ending Iris's bloodline for good. In the end, Final Destination. Bloodlines proves one thing: death can't be defeated, and if you want to dive deeper into the Final Destination franchise and see how these scenes were made, click on the screen and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.